It's literally all that I wear. Project Rock, my shoes, my shirt. I have pants, I have shorts.
I'm the same way with Venom stuff.
I mean, for real. I have an image to maintain, and that's the wannabe Rock.
I guess.
I mean, except when he's being Black Adam, the worst DC movie maybe ever made. But
it's so stupid because I would wear like anything from like this or just any type of graphical tee or band t-shirt or whatever. And then this was maybe like a year or two ago. Corporate office was like new dress code for no reason. They were just like, you can only wear solid color shirts and you have to wear pants, no shorts. And we're all just like, why? And it doesn't make any sense for us maintenance techs because it's like, why do we need to look presentable when we're getting our hands dirty?
Meanwhile, I'm a sales guy, and I'm in sleeveless shirts and shorts every single day.
Yeah.
So not even in the summer? You can't wear shorts in the summer?
I mean,
Like not khaki shorts?
Just not shorts really in general, but I've also just gotten used to wearing pants year round. So the only time I wear shorts is just if I'm staying at home and don't plan on going anywhere. And I have like gym shorts that I've had for like a few years now.
Okay. On that note, welcome back to Capes, Cowls, and Conversations. We are on our road to Daredevil Born Again. If you've listened in the past or if this is your first episode, we'd sure love it if you would like, share, subscribe, click the notification button. Go ahead and leave a comment. We take all the comments, answer the polls. There's a poll on every single Spotify version of this show. So jump in there and answer the polls and we'll do something with all the feedback that we can get. So we appreciate any of that. Guys, we finally made it to Netflix's Avengers.
Yep. Low budget Avengers.
Low budget Avengers.
Ouch.
I mean,
it was still
what else
good
would you
for a
call
small
it?
budget
That's
show
true.
where it's basically just a group of superheroes just gathering up together.
True. I'd say it's only good, though. It's not bad. It's not my favorite of the shows.
Really?
Yeah. It's not.
Well, let's get into it. We can talk about why it's not your favorite or whatever. I told you how it started.
Yeah. Oh, the setup is great.
The setup's fantastic.
I
think
love this setup.
the setup is great. The payoff is where it hurts. I don't really like Sigourney Weaver in the show.
Okay.
I don't like her character. She takes a long time to develop, and then they just kind of kill her off out of nowhere.
Well, okay. So there's a lot to get into here.
There is.
Let's just start with the earthquake. Let's start with the earthquake that sets off this whole thing.
Was the earthquake the result of them going down into the...
It was the result of them digging up the door.
Yeah,
Okay.
digging up the door, trying to get to the dragon bones. The earthquake is what caused the chaos that got Matt back to being Daredevil because he had quit. And Colleen and Danny didn't really know what they were after, but they knew something was happening in New York.
Yeah.
I forgot that they weren't even in New York at the start of the show.
Why were they just traveling around? I mean,
They were chasing down leads on
Yeah.
the hand. And obviously Elektra was there.
yeah.
Where were they? Thailand, Malaysia? I want to say it was Thailand.
I don't remember.
I
But
don't remember. Where
Anyway,
they were.
It was-
in Southeast Asia somewhere.
Yes.
And Elektra was there, so they were chasing down leads and probably the right leads.
Well, like I'll tell you, it is so insignificant that after the first time viewing, I thought they were just in New York again. I'm not even joking.
No, they definitely were not in New York.
No.
So I think Elektra was killing off the remaining chased is the way it comes across to me.
Yes.
She was
Yeah.
killing off the remaining chased, and they didn't realize that those people were actually Danny's army, which I didn't either.
I didn't realize
so-
the chased was any part of the whatever group is from Kunlun?
I was just gonna say I didn't think they were. Well, they're. I don't even remember what the group. They're just called the monks. They weren't. They weren't like the monks of Kunlun. They were just.
Well, no, yeah. So, in Daredevil season 2,
Yep.
Stick talks about being part of the Chaste, right?
Does he mention that by? He doesn't.
Yeah. No, it's called by name, the Chaste, for sure. It's called by name. But what he doesn't say is what he would, and this kind of bothers me about the whole Defender show is the entire time he's training Elektra and he's training Matt, he never mentions that the Chaste is the army of the Iron Fist. That only comes out in Defenders. You get the name the Chaste out of Daredevil season 2. It is mentioned. Hey, I mean, I don't want to go back and watch it again, but if you want to go back and watch it again, be my guest.
I was pretty
I was about
sure.
to say, I don't really.
I was pretty sure. No, I'm like 95% sure it was the same thing that Titans did, where the name was never said in the entire first season, and then in the very first episode of season 2, it's said like 95 different times.
No, it literally it's said in Daredevil season 2 for sure. He tells them part of the Chaste. But he never brings up the Iron Fist. Like you would think if he's training these people to be part of this army for this war, he would be like, and don't worry, it's not just going to be you. We'll be led by the immortal Iron Fist, which we heard that name a billion times, but we only heard it from Danny.
That's fair.
I was going to say,
why would he not tell him that? Like, you will have a leader.
I think it feels like the way it feels like is that season 1 of Daredevil is very much meant to stand on its own legs. Jessica Jones was also very much meant to stand on its own legs. And then when they actually needed to come back around and start tying things to Defenders, they just started adding stuff when they needed it. And like, I think for instance, like Iron Fist, Luke Cage, and Defenders, I think it's very obvious that those are written and shot and directed very around the same time, whereas the other 3 were like Daredevil season 1 and season 2 were very much not shot together. Jessica Jones was not shot together. These were done separately and individually, where the other ones were more planned. So by the time you get there, all this information has to be dropped and explained. But in the earlier projects, they obviously didn't get to do that.
Maybe. Like I said, I know that they mentioned the Chase in Daredevil season 2, but maybe they weren't necessarily sure that Iron Fist was going to, how it was going to factor in. And so they couldn't say, he's going to lead you.
Well, and it's like,
that's entirely possible.
it's like Thor. Iron Fist was very much the Thor, where like it has to introduce the main, like the main plot that's setting up for Avengers or Defenders, you know?
Okay.
Like the main, like all of the stuff that's happening in Avengers is directly tied back to Thor and Captain America.
I will say it is much. It really, Defenders doesn't feel like the culmination of the 4 characters.
No.
It feels like Iron Fist 1.5.
Yeah, it really does.
I was gonna say for me, it just felt like, but this is kind of a cool thing. This is actually one of the things I liked, is that it didn't feel like its own show. It felt like picking up on the back end of Daredevil season 2 and the back end of Iron Fist.
And that's it, though. I mean, it does kind of, you're right. It does kind of pick up on the back end of Daredevil season 2 also.
Yes.
But I don't feel like it's Daredevil season 2.5. I do feel like it's Iron Fist season 1.5.
Really? Because
yeah, I mean,
I feel like if
I mean, he does get so much to do in the show, but it's all built on the back of Danny. Even everything that Matt does is built on the back of Danny.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, just
feel
my
like
opinion.
This is more. I feel like Defenders is more or less just a season 2 of Iron Fist, and then the current season 2 would just be season 3.
Yeah.
Kind of. Kind
I
of.
can see that.
I mean, I see what you're saying. And I'll just explain what I think, and you don't have to agree with me. I'll just explain why I'm calling it 1.5. Because a lot of times when you do like a season 1 and then a season 2, they're not exactly a continuation of the same story. They might be a continuation of the same main character. Like Daredevil season 1 is the continuation of Daredevil, the character. But your Punisher arc and your what's her name?
Elektra.
Elektra arc have nothing to do with. Like that, it's an entirely separate kind of set of arcs between season 1 and season 2, where Iron Fist and Defenders, to me, they're just carrying on the Madame Gao hand arc.
Yeah.
In a way that it makes it more like a 1.5. Yeah, we're kind of transition you to Danny's season 2, but let's finish off what we didn't actually do in 13 episodes of Iron Fist.
I will say that's kind of also the biggest bummer with this show is that it's only 8 episodes. No, it's a bummer.
You think so?
I feel like
okay.
it was fine for it being 8 episodes.
See, you say that, but like one of the biggest things about these shows that people praise constantly is the fight scenes, the fight choreography, and the character interactions.
And the first fight with all 4 of them is a great fight.
Oh yeah, it is.
Like I said, I don't think there's a bad fight scene, but there are some some that are very weird. Like in the last 2 episodes, you have like one of the last 2 episodes, you have that like intercut. You have 3 different fight scenes happening at the same time. And
yes, you have the Daredevil Elektra. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
You have
the Colleen and Bakuto.
No, I was talking about the Iron Fist and Elektra fight cut with the Matt, Jessica, and Luke fight.
I said Daredevil Elektra, but you're right. It was Iron Fist Elektra and the other 3 fighting Madame Gao and the Japanese guy, and then Colleen fighting Bakuto. Yeah. That's what you were.
Well, Colleen fighting Bakuto's in the final episode. This is before that. But it's so poor. Like to me, it's so weirdly cut. I don't like the way that it was cut together, and I also don't like Madame Gao in that fight scene.
Yeah,
she is. I mean, I know the show's on a budget, like compared to the other seasons of the Defenders saga. But every time she went to use that force push, it looked so bad in this show. I think there was only one moment where it looked really good, and that's when was it when Danny caught it? Like, you know, like he with the fist, like caught it backward. That was
that was really cool.
So it made hers less of a force push and more of a force of wind.
Yeah.
That he was able to punch it back. A force punch, right? Star Wars, you wouldn't actually be able to punch that back on Darth Vader. I mean, you might be able to break the hold, but you're not going to punch his force back into him, right?
They can do 2 force pushes.
Again, I'm not that kind of nerd, so I actually have to ask.
Two force pushes can happen at the same time. One can be more powerful than the other if you're not concentrated enough. So, in theory, but it's not. In theory, the same thing could happen.
But it's not wind. Like Danny's punch is literally.
Yeah, his punch. I think they were trying to like. This is just me thinking it. Like I feel like it was, at least in some regard, exerting chi more than it was an actual punching of the wind.
I think
I could be
so.
wrong.
I think you're right. I'm just thinking like when he punched in Iron Fist, he punched the floor in Rand.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like he punched the floor, and then the waves of the vibration and of that punch created like wind and created something that it wasn't just the punch. It was actually
the shockwave. It
was like the shockwave of it. Yeah.
The way I
thank you. I couldn't think of the word. I'm struggling with words on camera lately.
The way I was thinking of it is similar to, because you see Danny punch Luke, and it has almost a similar effect as to when Thor's hammer hits Cap's shield.
Similar.
It's very similar.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah,
that's
so,
fair.
I actually thought that was pretty cool. That could actually happen between them two.
I don't know if that's necessarily something that they did in the comics, or if they were just trying to have a moment similar to Cap and.
I think it was hilarious when he wakes up and he's like, or no, when he's knocked out and they're like, "We're gonna go check Midland Circle." And Matt's like, "You're gonna come with us? What about you?" And he goes, "Well, someone's got to be here that can take a punch."
Yeah.
Luke is literally the only one who can actually take a punch from Danny.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
I will say I do like that Madame Gao was involved in fight scenes this time around.
Well,
Because
and,
she really wasn't in Iron Fist season 1 at all.
and that's the thing about her, whatever she's doing, or we'll call it force punch for lack of a better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing about it is that's the only way literally she can participate.
I think for me, if she had like,
She's not going to do kung fu. That's my point.
well, I was kind of hoping, and I know it would be a CG thing, and so that's probably why it didn't happen. But I was kind of hoping the way that they were presenting her character, I felt like it was going to be like Yoda. You know, like you look at her.
Oh, okay.
Well, like you look at her and she's
jumping and flipping around.
Yeah.
Just no lightsaber.
like, well,
Pretty
she had a
much.
staff.
That's fair.
Well,
Or
her
she had a cane,
cane,
yeah. So the way I saw it, I was like, oh, okay. So she's like weak and frail. So they're gonna like play on that, and
I think it's good they didn't, because
Really?
the comparison to Yoda would have trashed the fight scene. Like people would have trashed it, been like,
I
why are they
think-
copying Star Wars?
No, I disagree.
I don't think Star Wars fans like for Star Wars stuff to show up in other shows.
I disagree. That one of the best gags in the early MCU is when they decided to cut off people's hands as a reference to Star Wars.
That's fair.
Oh,
That is true. That's true.
So, but yeah, so I don't, I think that's what I was kind of expecting from her. But then I also remembered like the CG wasn't very great for these shows, and they didn't really have a budget. So obviously at that point I realized, oh, that's all she's going to do. is
Well,
force push.
I think it's okay.
It's,
I
it's
also
okay.
noticed that anytime Gal was involved in a fight scene, it was always Jessica who would either just beat the crap out of her and just launch her across the room, and then she would just get up like nothing happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what really frustrated me though? I wish Gal was the driving force of the show.
Well, and that is a weird thing that we talked about before with Iron Fist. And Daredevil is that when they first introduced the hand, first of all, Wilson Fisk was a part of it.
Yeah.
It was Wilson Fisk and Gao and Nabu and the Russian guys.
Oh, well, Wilson didn't know he was part of the hand though. They didn't tell him.
Okay, well,
That's true. I mean, but he was still technically involved.
he was
so-
still showing up to meet
Yeah.
and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden they act like the African guy, Sawande, is that what his name was?
Was always there.
Was always there, but he wasn't.
Yep.
Um,
It actually would have made sense if it was like Cottonmouth, like came back from the dead.
and the other, or even not even that. If it was the guy from Luke Cage season 2,
Oh, yeah.
Bushmaster.
Yeah.
If it had been Bushmaster, that would have probably made sense. I know you don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah,
but,
if you
but
like,
if it had
yeah.
been Bushmaster as a setup for Luke Cage season 2, that might have made more sense. But I guess when you lose your head,
well, the way I see it is that Bushmaster could have been set up here and then just like
Bushmaster could have been the
he
guy who
could-
took his place.
Well, I was gonna say more like he could have showed up here and had a Bakuto type role and then just like disappeared.
Well, also Bakuto, he's in there like he was always part of it, but he wasn't part of the hand in Daredevil. He was only part of the hand.
Bakuto wasn't even in Daredevil.
That's what I'm saying.
It's
He
crazy.
wasn't there. He wasn't in the hand until Iron Fist, but they act like these 5 people were doing this thing this whole time.
Yeah.
So that seems like kind of a miss when you look at Daredevil hand members versus Defenders hand members.
Well, and again,
Yeah.
I don't think they were ever intended to be the
Sure.
hand. It was just a criminal. There was several different criminal organizations that Fisk was bringing together, and it just so happened that Maddo Gao was
was
the hand.
also the hand.
Well, that's kind of why I'm frustrated.
Which is why it shouldn't have been Madame Gao then. It should have been Sigourney Weaver.
Well, in hindsight, yes, but also that's why I'm frustrated that it shouldn't have even been Sigourney Weaver in Defenders. It should have just been Madame Gao.
Or
You've had all the setup there. Her being the leader would have made the most sense.
actually, her wouldn't have made any sense at all because she's the leader, as we talked about with Iron Fist. She's the leader of the Chinese part of the hand. So it would have made more
She
sense.
was
It would have made more sense if Bakuto was the person because he was actually based in New York City the entire time. Now,
Yeah.
I'm just saying he was actually based there the entire time. Gao was in China. She went back to China at one point.
But Gao was actually from Kunlun. Bakuto wasn't.
Yes, he was. Everybody there was from Kunlun.
He wasn't a leader.
Yes, he was. They talk about that in Defenders. Those 5 people. In fact, he said it. It was her and the Japanese guy and Bakuto together confronted Sigourney Weaver and said, "We wouldn't have followed you out."
See, that's so dumb because they didn't make that clear. In
No,
Iron Fist
right,
at all.
right, not at all, right?
That's why I'm saying Madame Gao was they at least said she was from Kunlun in Iron Fist. It would have made sense if she was the leader.
So they explained it in the Defenders that all 5 of them followed her out of Kunlun.
Yes,
Or the other 4, sorry, followed
Yeah.
the other 4 followed her out of Kunlun. She was the leader of the group.
Yes, the white lady is the one that was from Kunlun leading.
That's part of the canon of that show, though.
I know it's.
They literally have that conversation when they begin to doubt her. When the 4 of them, or I guess the 3, because the black guy was captured at that point, the 3 of them begin to doubt her ability to lead, and they tell her, we actually questioned whether we should follow you out of Kunlun to begin with. So
Yeah.
they were all from, even Bakuto, which means Bakuto should have been running New York because he was based there. He should have been the person Wilson Fisk was probably dealing with the entire time.
But like,
I bet he wasn't cast at that point though. So
Well, they did. I assume it was more like in the script they didn't even know he was going to be a character.
right, no, I agree.
So, but again, that comes back to Madame Gao's been there from the start, from day one.
She should have been Sigourney Weaver.
She should have been Sigourney.
She really should have.
I think that would have been better payoff. It definitely would have paid off when the building collapses on them. Like, I just think that would have been more interesting. But back to what I was. So the reason this show is disappointing to me is because I think it should have been 13 episodes. There's so many rushed fight scenes. Like, there's some fight scenes that start and then you think they're gonna go for a minute and then they just cut at like the weirdest. Like, they stop the fight scene really quickly.
Yeah,
There's quite a few of those. Now I wouldn't say they're bad fight scenes. They're good fight scenes. It just feels like they just happen so fast.
well, the way they figure it out is very fast too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
The way they figure where it's happening, who's involved, all of that happens so fast.
Well, and then the character interactions is another big part of these shows. And that was what kind of I was getting into is I wanted to see more of the side characters having some involvement. But if they get sidelined into a police station so fast, they don't really get to do anything. And then when they do get to do something, it's like the end of the show.
Well, there was definitely some opportunity. And these shows have done probably the best job of anything as far as mixing the characters together, from one show to the next and carrying them over and such. But you put them all in that police station and you just feel like there is an absolute miss if you don't do something with Trish and Karen Page.
And they have a single conversation.
They have a single conversation, but one of them's a reporter and one of them's a talk show host. And there's a big miss right there.
Yeah.
I think the biggest miss, and maybe you disagree, I don't know, but I think the biggest miss is that the only people that know that Matt is Daredevil by the end of the show are the core 4. So the main characters of every show.
Yeah.
Matt and Foggy. Or Karen and Foggy. Foggy and Karen.
Yeah.
And that bugs me. I actually think it would have made the most sense, even for Misty, for all of them to have figured it out, because
I don't see how. I guess in the scene where Luke and Jessica break out of the police
she would
station,
have put it together. But then she doesn't know.
she's like, oh, they kidnapped Murdoch.
So
Really?
Yeah. That
why
was
would
a
they kidnap the
stupid
attorney?
decision that
Yeah,
they
it's
drew to.
I think every single one of the reoccurring side characters that have stuff to do in the shows, not the ones that kind of just float in just to fill in space, but like Colleen should have known, Misty should have known.
Well, and
Like-
Misty's very poorly written
In this show, yes.
in all of them. And the reason I say that is because even from Luke Cage forward, she never seems to learn.
Who? What?
Like Clara's trying to tell her, like Luke's North Star that guides him is doing the right thing, even if it causes trouble for him, if it's the right thing for the world.
You know what?
But that's something that she should have picked on from Luke Cage season 1. Misty should have been like, okay, I understand this guy now, but instead we're at Defenders. And
she's
Misty is still like, Luke, I'm trying to help you, but you're doing the wrong thing. Dude,
The
no.
line that pissed me off the most was when Colleen had to point out, or not Colleen, Claire had to point out directly to her face, you are the one when he first got back that pulled him aside with a conversation and said, you need to help our community.
Right.
And now he's doing it and you're upset and reprimanding him.
Well, because Misty's poorly written. She's just poorly written.
She is.
They do a lot of good things in these shows, but Misty is not one of them.
Well, and like I think almost anybody who wasn't any woman that wasn't Jess really didn't get anything to do in the show.
And also, if
they were a good guy.
One other thing that should kind of bother you, early when we were on a different show,
yes,
I don't remember which one. I said that we were set up for a Luke and Jessica getting together thing.
Yes,
and then you said no, we were set up for Luke and Claire.
I'm actually glad that it's Luke and Claire that are together.
It's really not, and they actually make Luke out to be a bad guy when it comes to relationships. Let me rub my eye right here on camera. They make Luke out to be a bad guy when it comes to relationships because he basically flat out tells Jessica at the end of Defenders, if you want to hook up, we can. I mean, he basically goes to the bar at the end of Defenders, meets up with Jessica, and basically says, "If you want to hook up, we can."
That is not what
we really missed a moment together. I mean, it's a total like
and this might be just because the writers of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones were not necessarily fully involved with the show. I'm not entirely sure, but that's what it feels like to some degree. I think that, well, first of all, he just says, if you ever need a friend.
No, he doesn't just say that. No, he doesn't.
Yes, he does.
No, he doesn't.
He never said it. Okay.
I swore that's all he said.
No, it's not.
He said the thing about us missing a moment. Yes. But he was talking about the fact that he's with Claire and she's on her own.
They're also talking about, you didn't call me. Well, you could have called me. Well, that's a fair point.
That was
like
that's not, no. He ends that conversation by saying, if you ever need a friend, you can always call. And then she goes,
yeah, we can get coffee sometime. And he gives her that sly look like, yeah, we could get coffee sometime. But he doesn't say yes. He just gives her that look like, I know what coffee is.
He rolls his eyes and walks away. I don't
but he doesn't say, no, I'm with Claire, or no, that wouldn't be right. He's just like, girl, I know what coffee is.
I'm pretty sure that the eye roll was supposed to indicate no, that's not happening.
Well, it didn't indicate it, let me tell you, because I didn't see it that way at all. And I would not be the only person who didn't see it that way.
Well, the way I saw it was that he eye rolled and didn't respond.
They should have made him more clear. They should have made him more clear.
The part that I was like, dude, you're in a relationship, is when he lands on top of Jess.
Yes!
And she goes, we got to stop meeting like this. And he goes something along the lines, or no, was it him that said, I don't remember. One of them says it, and it's like, dude, you're in a active
exactly.
relationship.
He's not they make him not a good guy.
That was the one that bugged me, though, was when he landed on top of her and said,
well,
I thought it was funny, though.
No, it's funny, but you wouldn't do that to your girlfriend.
Think it was
I
out
also
of character.
don't think that they would really hook up, because the way Jessica seems to be around Luke is, for me anyways, I can tell that she still hates that she had to shoot him point blank in the face with a shotgun.
Yeah, but remember, after she did that, remember that she's laying there and he's unconscious, and she says something to the effect of, I could have seen something with you. I could have seen a life with you.
Yep. And then says in that same sentence that, I'm sorry, I would mess things up and I should leave so that your life doesn't get worse.
Yeah, but
something to that
effect. She had feelings for him, and that's appropriate because they get married in the comics.
Well, what's gonna get there is, I think if I remember correctly, Luke does not end up with Claire, right?
I don't think so. I don't think neither one of them ends up with anybody at the end of it.
So that does leave the door open for it to come back. I don't.
We'll see.
But actually, on that subject, the reason they were separated in the first place was because they didn't want two main defenders basically overshadowing each other's shows. They felt like if Luke was back in Jessica's show, or if Jessica was in Luke's show, that the two characters would overshadow each
And
other.
yet they were going to do a Heroes for Hire.
True.
It makes exactly. That's,
Which, by the way, I do want to comment on something you mentioned, and we talked about this with Iron Fist, and this is another reason that this is Iron Fist 1.5.
yeah.
We talked about him not getting his fan service costume,
Yep.
but when fighting, why am I blanking on her name? Elektra. Thank you. I'm gonna like sear it in there. When fighting Elektra,
Just call her Ellie
She-
going forward.
she spins him and he hits his fist into the wall and he falls down and he's laying there for a second. If you notice, he's laying there in green pants and a green shirt that's ripped open from the belly button up like this, and his tattoo shows through. It's all green. What he's wearing. It's not just green lighting.
I know.
So that's as close as you get to the actual
And it's
costume.
see, here's the thing,
Because
right?
it's also that big. It's also that big split.
Yeah.
Like
this
his
is the part that
costume.
bugged me though, because the end of the show, Danny effectively takes over for Matt, and Matt's initial outfit is basically an Iron Fist ripoff suit. I actually think it kind of is. It's very similarly designed. It would have been cool to end the show off in like a makeshift Iron Fist suit that was reminiscent, basically just a knockoff of Daredevil's original suit.
I
Or
don't
the
know,
first
but
season.
my whole point was
That would have been cool.
If we're used to seeing the costume one time in the first season, then that makes this more like Iron Fist season 1.5, because you do actually see him in an all green outfit.
I don't
The shirt does come open.
It
He does
looks-
show his tattoo.
It looked, yeah.
I didn't say it looked. I'm just saying
No, I
that's the
get it.
closest thing you get to his actual green costume. And he didn't have a yellow bandana on, so there wasn't that. But
Yeah,
that's as
and
close as you
that'll
get.
always
And he's
frustrate me.
he's literally laying on the ground. The camera pans and kind of spins on him a little bit, so it was meant for you to see. Like you were meant to see that
I
costume
fully
looking
get
thing.
it. I think it looks stupid.
I'm not
think
arguing that. I'm
frustrated
just
me.
saying.
I do like that at the end, though. Danny is perched up on top of a building, and at first, when I first saw it,
You were like Spider-Man.
no, I thought it was Matt in his suit, at least with just the mask off, and then you just see Danny's fist start glowing and it lights him up. I thought that was pretty cool, since he was basically held to a promise to protect New York
City.
now.
Yep.
So
Hopefully he matured, right? Because
So,
he was
I
incredibly
don't
immature
think-
for that whole show.
I don't think he'll mature in this season two.
For Defenders, he was definitely very immature.
The entire
Ever
I can't hear it. This is where him and Matt were similar, but also didn't make any sense. In Daredevil, Matt's like, I'm the only one. I'm the
Yeah.
only one who can stop the hand. I'm the only one who can. And then Danny is like, I'm the only one who can stop. It's my purpose in life. And they both believe they're the only one who can stop the hand. But Danny is not mature enough to hear from the other heroes when they're sitting there saying, dude, calm down and we can do this together. And he's like, it's
Yeah.
my responsibility.
So this is kind of my argument for why there should have been at least a few more episodes, is because it happens so fast. I can't realistically see them mourning Matt the way that they do. I'm not even talking about Karen and Foggy. Obviously they do. But like, I can't see Jessica and Luke and Danny all like, because in the realistic timeline of things, it only happened in like 3 days.
Yeah.
Like
They didn't really know him.
no. And so I'm like,
Wait, it only takes place over 3 days?
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
I thought it was a whole entire, like, longer than a
No.
week or so.
No.
Like three or 4 days.
Oh,
Yeah. So
I mean, I guess if you count the flight from Southeast Asia back to New York for Danny and Colleen, then maybe it was a week.
but as far as all of them
But as far as
interacting,
once they get together all in New York, yeah, it's
Yeah,
only
it's
the
like-
3 or 4 days
yeah. So
Okay.
total.
so for them to mourn the way they do, I feel like that just doesn't hit for me the same way. I feel like it needed just a couple more episodes for and that's what I mean. The character interactions do not get to shine in the show like they do in the others because it's rushing at such a fast pace. I feel like this just needed 13 episodes, but they said the reason that they cut it down, there's two, was budgetary constraints. And then the other reason was that they wanted it to be a 3-act story And so the first 2 episodes are like act 1, and then like 3, 4, and 5 are act 2, and then like the last bit is act 3, and then like that's insane because you can do that in 13 episodes, still have a 3-act structure, and not make everything go at breakneck speed where some of the characters don't even get to really do anything. Like Elektra,
I don't think there was enough. I don't think there was enough space for. I don't think that there was enough for everybody to be developed in 13 episodes. Some people didn't need the development, and other people did.
Yeah, and well, I'm saying the ones that did.
Maybe 10, maybe just 2 more episodes would have done.
Well, and I'm thinking like a few of the characters that needed it really did suffer for it, like not having those extra.
Sure,
episodes.
but maybe just 10 episodes and not 8. I don't know that everybody.
I don't know if it needed 13 specific, but it
needed more.
It needed more.
Sure.
And
or make them all an hour and a half or something.
See, one of the episodes that I was like, this needed to be more was Elektra. Her turn to realizing who she was happens so fast, and then she just kills Sigourney Weaver like at the end of that episode.
Yeah.
So I feel like it needed like an episode more of her just figuring out her past, where she's not with the Hand and the Hand are scrambling. And like the defenders are kind of winning, but then she comes back and screws everything up.
Yeah.
That would have made for an interesting episode. Add to the plot line a little bit. Yeah, a little more drama, and the characters get to interact more so that by the time you're not like, oh, well, why are they mourning? It doesn't make sense. I feel like that could have been like 2 more episodes. That would have made it work better.
Well, I do think something that doesn't really come across in the format of all the shows is that they know who he is.
Who?
Daredevil, not Matt.
Oh.
They know who Daredevil is, and that doesn't really come across. At one point, they're all a little surprised that he's Daredevil because, as they say, sitting in the restaurant, like, I heard he quit. I heard he stopped. How can you be him? You're blind. Yeah. But they obviously respect Daredevil and know who he is, even if they didn't know him personally. So there is room to mourn him, I think, from that perspective, because having seen him in action even for 3 days, now they know the person they've respected for as long as he's been active in the city. They just didn't know it was him.
Yeah.
I mean, I think maybe that's the justification for it.
Yeah.
That's true.
So
I will say though, so this keeps running through my mind. The first time that I saw the actress that plays Alexandra, for whatever reason, my mind was like,
alien.
Yes. I was literally like, what's Ripley doing in the Marvel universe?
Yes. Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't see her without thinking alien either.
I
didn't think alien, but I just did not. I didn't care for her in the show. I also didn't really. I mean,
I really didn't like that they made her the leader. It really should have just been Gal from the very start.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
It was weird for her to step in. I feel like, and again, we've talked about this before, I feel like they were disjointed in the way they handled the Hand.
Yeah.
So I guess the question would be, is this a Marvel problem or was this a Netflix problem? Because Netflix points the finger at Marvel like, oh, they weren't giving us money, we had to fight for it. But then Marvel is blaming Jeff Loeb like, oh, well, like, but again, that's mostly Kevin Feige going.
I think this was a writing issue. I think this was a Netflix issue because they were in charge of the writing and production of these shows. Marvel was the money, and that was really it. And that's from the Netflix CEO. Like, he said, we wanted to do more and we wanted to make more and we wanted bigger things, but Marvel was the purse strings on the whole thing. But Netflix was the idea generator behind it. Because they had more Defenders things they wanted to do. They had more more seasons of these shows they wanted to do and interconnect. And that would be their writing problem, the way that they handled the writing of it. And that may be part of why Marvel was pulling back on the money and being like, you did a great job. You did a good show, but there's some big plot holes here for people who actually sit down, like, think about it. Because I can tell you that having watched this before without us sitting and talking about it, I just thoroughly enjoyed it and I didn't overthink it.
Oh,
but now that we
too.
have to, I'm just saying, now that we have to sit down and talk about it every week, now I'm like, oh, well, that was a hole.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that was a problem. Oh, well, that wasn't thought out well. And maybe Marvel was doing that with Netflix the whole time. Like maybe they were going, we don't want to give you more money because you're just creating bigger and bigger holes. I don't know. I can't speak for them.
Right.
But maybe they were analyzing it harder than some of the fans were. Because when we watched it the first time through, I was just like, this is so good. This is better than most of the stuff that we see. But now that we're analyzing it, I'm like, there are a lot of things that they could have done way better.
Yeah. In hindsight, they really either could have just made the episodes longer, because it literally doesn't exceed an hour or even go above 50 minutes really for any of the episodes.
Content-wise.
Or just make it 10 to 13 episodes, just so that way it kind of matches up with the other shows and how many episodes they got respectively for their seasons.
Sure.
I think this show is the one that killed Iron Fist, though.
I mean, it very well may have.
Well, I was going to say,
because he was annoying. Well, and I just said in our Iron Fist review, like, he's my favorite character after watching the 4 individuals.
Yeah.
Iron Fist was my favorite character. It wasn't my favorite show. Daredevil was. But he was my favorite character. And then he got annoying. Like, I'm the immortal Iron Fist. Wait, you didn't hear me. I'm the immortal Iron Fist. Wait, I am. It's like, shut up. Well, and so the same way Cameron's doing with me right now. He's like, shut up.
Crazily enough, I think the people that wrote Daredevil, or at least Daredevil season 2, primarily wrote the Defenders. And so when I think that they came to this show, they just flanderized Iron Fist from his own show. You know, okay, it's a Simpsons term.
Flanders. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, where is this word coming from?
Yeah, they flanderized Iron Fist, so he became kind of the dumbest version of himself.
Maybe.
Instead of
really?
Yeah, instead of being himself, because the writers from Iron Fist didn't feel like they were in this show.
It didn't feel like they progressed his character at all.
No, not really.
So
and maybe he maybe even took some steps backwards.
Yeah.
So I could see what you're saying for sure.
So maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe they did, and they just didn't have time to develop him. I don't know, but that would be my guess, is that it felt more like, because you say it feels like Iron Fist 1.5, but honestly, it felt more Daredevil heavy. It felt like Daredevil was the character they were riding on for the show.
Well, they were because of the Elektra relationship part of it, because all of this was going to be solved by stopping Elektra. So there had to be heavy Daredevil, because he's the only one who even knew who she was. But at the same time, it was Danny is the key to opening the gate. Danny is the one who can stop the hand. Danny is the one we all have to protect. Danny. And so it's kind of like, and also it continued the story with Bakuto. It continued the story with Gao.
I will say that
it just felt more Iron Fist.
Every interaction with Danny, though, that isn't, plot related, is fun. Like listening to him and Luke banter.
Or
like at one
and they
point,
set up that show
really
so good.
Yeah, like I wish we got.
If we got Heroes for Hire, I swear it would have been a great show, just because of the way they banter back and forth.
And I love the moment where Danny starts to talk about a dragon, and he's just like, "Man, stop lying." And then he's just like,
Luke starts to feel bad.
He's like, "So you fought a dragon?"
He's like, he wasn't stop lying. It was like, you got to tell this story again.
Yeah.
And then he's just kind of like looks down and he's like, I feel bad for saying that. So you fought a dragon. So you punched him in his molten heart, huh? He's like, crap. I got to listen to this story. Maybe this guy will calm down a little bit.
I will say, I know the Defenders was basically made to wrap up the hand story.
Basically.
I still don't like that they killed off Stick the way that they did. I thought they were going to keep him going at least through like Daredevil season 3.
So I forgot they killed Stick.
Oh yeah.
Like I was curious. My brain was like, why didn't he appear in season 3?
Because they killed him.
And I forgot. I was just like, if he's around, why didn't he just come back again? No, he's dead. Yeah. And I forgot it was Elektra that killed him.
Yeah, Elektra of all people to be the one that kills him.
And
well, he was horrible to her. If you remember Daredevil season 2.
Yeah, that's true.
So he was going to kill her the entire season.
Really
of
should have
season
made either one whole episode or just like a good portion of one. My mind blanked.
Is this
geez.
the Elektra needs an episode to her?
Yes.
Yeah, the one that I was talking. Yeah, that's
Because the one dream sequence that she has was not enough as to why she was starting to remember who she actually was.
I will say this. In the episode where she goes into Matt's apartment, that's what's missing. She has no flashbacks in that episode.
except. Well, oh yeah,
She has no flashbacks. You can tell what she's thinking. She goes and looks at something. She goes and lays on the bed.
yeah.
yeah.
She should have had a flashback to when she was injured and Matt was taking care of her and she was laying in the bed.
I
When Karen walked in.
instinctively
thought
started
of
doing that in my head.
But she didn't. And that was
No.
missing from the episode. Flashback moments of her in Matt's apartment were missing from the
and
episode.
I thought Matt was going to walk in with her being in there. And they were going to
and
talk
they could
or
have done something with
yeah.
that.
I actually liked that they didn't do flashbacks. I'm a big person on show don't tell, and I feel like if they had because that would be a lot of telling.
That would be showing what's going on in her head.
Is showing the emotions that she was going through, which you just described. You saw it on her face. You know exactly what she's thinking.
You do, but you can convey it better if you give the flashback. Her emotion expresses so much better.
I think it's the same. See, I disagree, but mostly because in Punisher, you get a scene that implies that, or not in Punisher, in Daredevil season 2.
I was going to say Punisher's full of flashbacks, like every 5 seconds.
I meant Daredevil season 2. You get that scene where Punisher figures out who Matt is, that Matt is Daredevil, and it is all from facial expressions.
Yeah.
He doesn't explicitly say it.
Yeah,
you
but
can tell what he's thinking.
You don't have to all the time, but in Matt's apartment with someone who's struggling with their memory because she doesn't even remember who she is, to watch her flash back would have made her emotions more understandable.
I think if the way they did it was that like some things were obscured. Like if Matt's face was obscured in a flashback, like she was having, you could see she was struggling.
Just something more than just her walking around the apartment, picking up things and looking at them. Actually, show her remembering what she picked up. Like she picks up the book, but she picks it up out of the case that holds the Daredevil costume.
Yeah,
like she could have remembered him, putting the costume in the case or taking it out of the case at some point. Just
so it's there.
Just so it's there to explain her emotion of seeing that case. I agree with you on the Punisher thing. You don't need to explain everything, but in a case where you've got someone who has lost their memory and they're starting to get it back, to your credit, to your point, if you don't want to show Matt's face, you want it to be fuzzy because she's just remembering, fine. But there needed to be some kind of flashback there, even if she was struggling to see it clearly, just so that you understood that she was struggling to flashback clearly.
I think I would agree with you more if we had more episodes, if we had more time to spend on it.
Well, and both of you have said the episodes don't even reach an hour.
Yeah.
There's a way that episode could have reached an hour. Throw some flashbacks in there, make it more meaningful.
Yeah. So
add content to the episode.
Yeah, I agree if we did get that, more extra episodes and more time with the character. As far as the way they did it, I couldn't criticize that. I think the way they did it is pretty good for what we got. I wish we had more. I do agree, but as far as what we got, it was actually a well shot scene. Because again, like I said, you can tell what's going through her head even without her saying it.
Yeah, but it could have been more effective.
It could have been more effective. I agree. I do like the way they did it.
It would have definitely at least made that episode quite a bit better.
Yeah, but like I said, like we've already said, they needed an Elektra centric episode.
Something
where you get just more of her remembering stuff instead of just a couple scenes here or there, and then she fully remembers.
So there are several. I'm gonna spoil a little bit. There are several scenes in Punisher that look like his wife is in the room with him, and as far as he knows, she's in the room with him, and then she disappears because it was a memory. It was a thing. And so that should have maybe been done with Elektra for an Elektra-centric episode where she's seeing Matt and even if it's in a dream and it feels real and she's starting to remember, you could have done a lot of great things with that.
I think
that they kind of didn't do.
I think early on when they first introduced her, it would have been cool if she was already struggling with memories. And that one of the things that they twisted immediately when she was instead of saying, "Oh, well, she can't remember who she was; she's a different person." I think it would have been interesting if they actually twisted Matt to be evil in her head, and he just appears in scenes with her. But it's like a twisted version telling her to do.
I think
things.
Alexandra tried to do that. Because she went to her at one point and said, he's not who he says he is. He's trying to trick you. And I think she was hoping that would make her remember him differently.
Like episode 5 or 6 did that. I feel like it was so late in the show that
I don't think they recognized, or at least Alexandra didn't recognize that she was remembering. Even the Japanese guy tried to tell her, like, she kicked me
That's what I'm saying.
to save him. And Alexandra refused to believe that she was remembering.
I that's kind of why I feel like it should have been Gal, because Gal would have caught that immediately.
Oh yeah,
and then I feel like she would have twisted it. She tried to do that with Danny and his own show.
Yeah,
you know, she tried to twist words. She tried to make him like.
She's definitely better at that than Alexandra was.
Alexandra ever was. Yeah, I feel like that they could have done so much more with that, especially.
Yeah, no, you're right.
But again, if Gal was the main character, that would have happened, and I feel like that would have made more sense.
You're right. Absolutely. Yeah. Write it down. I said you're right.
It's the first one.
But
episode 24. Cameron's right.
He's been right all along since the Iron Man episode. Since the Iron Man episode.
Iron Man 3 is still good.
Anyway. No, Iron Man 3 is good. It's really
better
good.
than people give it credit for. I'll give it that.
So is Iron Man 2.
No.
And both of them are way better than Thor 2.
I still got to go back and rewatch The Dark World.
We're going to do that eventually.
I know.
But anyway, I don't know. The show feels like a lot of wasted potential in some regards. But again, it just feels like the most you can come back to is either it was budget because Marvel didn't want to spend, or it was Netflix who just didn't know what to do with 8 episodes. And
I think it might have been a little bit of both.
Probably.
I think it might have been a little bit of both. At some point, Disney was. I mean, here's the thing about a major corporation. They are not making a decision like this. Disney didn't just go one day and go, hey, guess what? We're making Disney Plus.
Yeah.
That thing had been talked about and discussed and beaten like a dead horse at Disney before they made that decision. You can rest assured. So at some point, they had to have said, this deal we have with Netflix, we need to start looking for an exit ramp. And it could have happened 2 years before this actual exit ramp actually happened, because those things take time and planning and contracts.
Well, there's a theory that Disney, and this may or may not be true, but there's a theory out there that Disney used the Marvel contract to exploit Netflix to see how they ran their business, so they could build off of it to make Disney.
That happens. That very well could be the truth, because that happens.
That it had like that was,
that happens in my industry.
No, yeah. So that's what the major theory is, that like they use the Marvel shows Marvel shows and Disney shows, like putting their streaming stuff on there specifically to see how they do streaming, and then to build off Disney Plus, and then to do their own thing. That it was never to really have the actual like following for these Marvel shows. It was mostly just so they could make Disney Plus.
And then they were good enough. And I will still say they're so good. They do some things better than Marvel has ever done. Some of these things, like the crossover stuff, Netflix knocked it out of the park in a way that Marvel never has. And at the same time, they're definitely now we see there are some flaws in these shows, some major flaws in these shows that you just don't necessarily catch.
So I would say the major flaws in these shows are still way better than any of the major flaws in the current Disney Plus Marvel shows.
What shows are we talking about?
Like Moon Knight, Hawkeye.
Moon Knight's just
Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I always say that these shows have problems.
What was wrong with Hawkeye?
What was wrong with Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
Well, you haven't seen Hawkeye, so I'm kind of hesitant to say this, but essentially,
then don't.
But essentially, the problem with Hawkeye is that they were originally going to do a lot of character development for Clint, and they cut all of it. All of it. And
I don't know if that's
flashbacks for the character. No, this is recorded. They were going to do. There were deleted scenes of flashbacks for Clint in his backstory to give him more development as a character. Completely cut. Kingpin was going to be revealed very early on in the show. And because they wanted to build off of hype culture, the way that Multiverse of Madness was and other shows, and basically WandaVision screwed up how these shows function because they were teasing Mephisto for a lot of it. And they were like, oh, the fans are excited. Let's build off that hype. So when they went to Hawkeye, instead of using the scenes that were supposed to be for Kingpin the whole show, they cut most of it and were like, we'll reveal him in episode 4 or 5.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
When did Mephisto
You're gonna
ever
spoil
get
everything
teased?
for that he didn't.
Oh.
But
they cut it. They cut it from WandaVision. That's my point.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. So like these shows, at least their worst problems are better than Marvel's worst
I don't
problems.
know. I mean, ultimately, I think it's bad writing is the problem. Is the major problem, and there's bad writing across the board, whether it's Marvel or Netflix or Sony. It's pretty much bad writing, and I think it comes down to. In a lot of cases, getting people to write these shows who don't necessarily love the comics. Like I could never write one of these shows, but I might be a prime candidate for writing one of these shows because I don't love the comics.
I hate when they do that with actors too, when they're like, "Oh, we want you to play this role, but do not play the video game until after we're done shooting."
Yeah,
And I'm like, why would you do that?
I think they should have learned something from Iman Vellani because she loved the character so much and she loved the comics so much. And her show, season 1 of Miss Marvel, is a fantastic show.
Well, it's crazy because this was a problem back in 1999 with Wolverine.
But I
was gonna say they told Hugh Jackman you can't read Wolverine, any Wolverine, and
But-
Kevin Feige snuck him in comics to read. So
But I'm
he
just-
actually
well, I'm just
understand the
saying, like,
character.
I'm just saying, like, there's places where you know they didn't love the comics in the
Yeah.
writing because if they did, there's certain things they wouldn't have done.
Well, even this show has like issues with that. Like, they're embarrassed of the costumes. Like,
Yeah,
heavily embarrassed of the costumes. But even then, like,
except for Daredevils.
well, even then, they didn't do the right shade of red. They didn't make it like a skin. Like, they were so afraid of doing the actual costume.
but
There's
they
no
gave
even
him a
D logos.
They gave him a close proximity
enough, yeah.
that it was appreciated compared to Luke Cage. I mean, look, Luke Cage wears a yellow t-shirt.
Yeah. Well, again, at least in the comics, he wears a yellow t-shirt. But like Danny Rand, completely afraid to just
put him
do
in that
his
green
costume. Just
He
completely.
doesn't need to be in a green
Not even just
jumpsuit in the
green,
2000s.
Like, they were so afraid to give him his mask. They did it for one episode and didn't do it.
The
for the rest of
mask would have
show.
been better than the jumpsuit.
Like Jessica Jones, instead of giving her,
He's got a yellow mask.
yeah. Well, and
When?
It's like Daredevil's when he puts on the sweater, or the scarf,
Yeah.
at the beginning of Defenders. Danny's is like a yellow version of that,
But it's
except
an
he's got
actual
black eyes,
black eyes, and they cut out the white holes.
and they
that
cut
are in
out the white
comics.
holes, but he's got black eyes and a yellow.
Yeah.
It's for lack of a better term, it's a scarf like that, and they
It's just a
never he
headband.
never wears one in the show ever.
Except for one episode.
The one where he's in a white jumpsuit instead of a green one that doesn't.
Well, that's also
Is this
in, the
in
comics,
season
but-
2 or was it
It's
season
like
two. No,
season 2.
but I'm
Oh,
saying
okay.
like they didn't come close to his costume,
They
and for absolutely no reason they didn't do Luke's costume.
well, and like for instance, Jessica, they instead of doing, because in the comics she actually was a superhero for a good period of time.
She hated it.
She was like embarrassed of having powers. She was like, I don't even want to be a superhero.
Well-
she gets a costume and she never wears it. She's like, this looks like a stripper suit.
Well, in the restaurant, she turns to Luke and she's just like, "Good luck when they give you a costume or whatever, fit you for a costume or whatever." She says to him, like,
Was it
like
call-
she hates the costume.
Was she like, call me when you get fitted for a costume?
Something
or
like that, yeah, something like that. So
Good Lord. Yeah, they made her so against being a superhero. It's kind of funny. I love when they're like gawking at her on the elevator. Like, whoa, she could hold this up. And then she's like, stop
Oh, yeah.
staring and
And
start
start climbing.
climbing.
That
Yes.
was funny.
Yeah.
That was a funny bit.
And even then, they still stare at her for a minute.
Yeah.
it's yeah.
So, all right. Well,
I don't know if there's much else to talk about.
I don't think there is. I
The-
think we've.
I will say it's crazy what's all connected to this because Cloak and Dagger and Runaways have references to Defenders.
Yeah, but we're not watching those.
I know. I wish we were.
We're not.
They're not canon, and neither is Agents of Shield. And it's a sad thing.
Cloak and Dagger would be the closest one. I wouldn't watch The Runaways,
What?
but Cloak and Dagger was fun.
What?
Yeah, Cloak
Why?
and Dagger was fun. The Runaways was stupid,
No, it wasn't.
and that's all I'm going to say about that.
That's crazy
Fair enough.
talk. Well, I think for me, it's just like they added a lot of lore to the Marvel universe, the MCU, and specifically, especially Agents of Shield. You have a lot of connected tissue back to the movies.
Cloak and Dagger should have never been canceled. It was a great show.
It was okay.
Again, it's another show that really never struck an interest to me.
I mean, there will be
I just knew it
no
was another Marvel show. I was like, oh, okay.
there will be no reason to watch or review it unless we're just looking for a filler episode.
I will probably have us watch it at some point just because
But
that's fun.
There's never going to be
Okay.
something that ties back to it.
Yet.
So there won't be.
Yet.
It's not coming.
Yet.
Tandy and what's his name are
Tandy and Tyrone will
Tyrone
return.
are too old now. They'd have to recast them.
What are you talking about? They could play adult. They're adults in the comics. They're not even teenagers.
Just saying. Anyway,
few
So
years
you
That-
think that they'll reappear in Secret Wars?
no.
I think that they have a possibility of repairing.
Tandy and Tyrone.
Give me a minute. I think they give me a minute. I think they do have a possibility of returning if these TV shows really like if the Daredevil Born Again resurgence really does work out, because there's a lot of stuff from Marvel Television that could return and still fit into the MCU. Runaways would be a little hard because they do have the book
And because
from.
because nobody cared about the Runaways.
That's not you liked the run. I don't even want to hear it from you. You actually liked it when it was running. The book from WandaVision and
The Darkhold.
Yes, the Darkhold appears in Agents of Shield and Runaways. Agents of Shield would be fine because you can at least just retcon. Oh, well, it look different here for whatever reason. But Runaways has a whole plot point for all 3 seasons revolved around the Darkhold. It'd be really hard to be like to explain how it got from the Runaways to WandaVision. Like it'd be really hard to explain that.
Okay.
That'd be the only
Wanda
issue.
killed them.
No, because
And that's appropriate.
the villains had it, and then
I mean, I could see that as a possibility.
no, the villains had it, and then Nico ends up with it at the end.
And Wanda killed her.
No,
It's perfect.
Nico was a great character. Why are you bashing the show? You do this sometimes. It's like you forget about a show and then you bash it for absolutely no reason. But you loved watching
it.
it.
Held no meaning in the greater scope of the MCU.
Okay, Kevin Feige.
So
Ooh,
I'm the Kev Bach.
It didn't work out in the sacred timeline.
It doesn't work out in the sacred timeline. That's right.
Zip it.
All right. That being said, if you like what you heard, we're going to call this an episode. Like, share, subscribe, follow, click the notification bell, leave us some comments, answer the poll, all of the things. And unless I get interrupted with something, then that is it.